Oh, greetings, everybody. Thanks for joining me. It's been a while since I last recorded a video. It's been a lot going on, as well as beyond the 64 squares, and things are kind of settling down. And as I'm looking outside, and there's quite a bit of snow falling, might get snowed in here, and wanted to tie up a loose end, which is my first survival session, Puzzle Rush survival session of the year. Apologies for the editing there, actually. Still dealing with a bit of a cold, so still coughing a bit. But what I wanted to do today is finish my Puzzle Rush survival session that I finished weeks ago now. I just didn't have the time to record. And I just want to kind of complete it. And it's a kind of thing where I'm going to try to be rather casual with my analysis today. And, you know, if you want to pause the video and kind of work with me just to see what you might play, I just want to cover each puzzle somewhat superficially just to complete the process, and then I can start focusing on some other content. I've been receiving a number of messages, people asking about lessons, and really appreciate that. And I'll try to get back to everybody soon. But truth be told, right now, with everything going on, I'm probably not accepting any private students, but may try to find material that's relatable for people looking to improve. Like, I received messages about, like, how do I, get over this certain rating, or how do I, beat this certain opponent, or whatever. And I want to create more video content addressing kind of these practical ideas. So anyway, we stopped last video at puzzle 40. So this is the puzzle in front of us. And the puzzle captures the pawn on e5. So with white to move, you can pause the video and see what you would play. Now, the first thing I notice is there's a pin. The knight is pinned to my queen. But on the other hand, the aggressor, the pinning bishop, is loose or unprotected. So you might look at little combinations where you can move your knight and expose an attack against the queen. One tactic, or expose an attack by the queen, I should say. One tactic you'll see from time to time is an attraction tactic, where you sacrifice your bishop, you attract the king to a square, where you can play check with your knight, and then you can regain your material. You captured a pawn, now you get to get the bishop back, and everything looks good. But always look out for the counter sacrifice. Like, if I move my king back, you take here, and everything feels great. But black can be more energetic and say, okay, your queen is hanging as well, so I'm going to play here. And, if you take me, and I take you, even if you now take my bishop, when the smoke clears, I'm up a piece as black. So keep that attraction idea in mind. Sometimes it works out very well, not quite here. Now, one big thing going in our favor is we're castled, and our rook has a rather uncomfortable staring contest from the king's perspective on the e-file. So here, a concept is when you feel like you're pinned, the knight feels sluggish. You're like, I can't move that knight. Well, if the king is here, then you can't legally move your knight. But this is a relative pin, not an absolute pin. An absolute pin is if there's a king here, you absolutely cannot move your knight because you cannot expose your king to check. On the other hand, this is a relative pin, meaning you can move your knight relative to your desire not to lose your queen. Right? So here, the solution, which I found, was knight takes e5. And the basic idea is, once you get over kind of the fear of the pin, now what you're saying is, sure, you can take me on d1, as the puzzle does. If you take here, I can, for example, kind of instructive about the pin, I can play check and attack your bishop. And if you try to defend, now your bishop is actually pinned, and a number of good moves, simple enough, might be just to take. But anyway, once you break through that barrier of I can move my knight, now your knight is the only barrier between your rook and the king. So when the puzzle takes our queen, Now we take the knight, so we're gaining a piece, right? We captured a pawn and a knight. Black has only captured our queen. And now we discover the rook's attack against the king as advertised, and the knight is attacking the queen. So as much as black would love to take our knight, can't do it. King is in check. And after the knight moved here, we take the queen and we solve puzzle 41, which is rated 2131. King f2 is played. Sorry, just to see that. King f2. And feel free to pause the video. What would you play here? Now, this is an example of kind of brute force calculation. And when you look at a check or a check, how do you kind of prioritize one over the other? I always look for the one that is more restrictive, meaning restrict your opponent's options. So if I go here, now I open up squares for the king, in addition to the queen being able to capture. So a lot to think about. If I go with this rook to e2, rook 8 to e2, now the king is in check and it cannot move. So the only move we have to calculate is the queen taking. And so when you say, okay, I lose a rook, I gain a queen, then I give up a second rook, how do I feel about giving up 2 rooks for the queen? Not sure at all, right? So what you want to visualize is when the smoke clears, before you evaluate and say, I don't know about 2 rooks versus a queen. With the king on e2, settle the tactics. The king is exposed. There's a number of ways to potentially attack the king. And you might notice the rook here is dependent upon the protection of the pawn. So here you can take the pawn with check, attacking the king and the rook. So that's how you solve this puzzle. And today we're going to see how you don't solve certain puzzles too. I didn't get them all right. This is the last session of the Puzzle Rush survival attempt that I made for the year. The first one, I should say. So just to review, I was rambling a little bit there. Rook 8 e2, queen takes, check, takes, and now we have a fork, forking the king and the rook. So that's puzzle 41. Let's go to 42, puzzle 42. Okay, so the pawn pushes forward. Well, one thing I notice, this pawn looks really, really dangerous, 2 squares away from promoting. Probably not our target. But when we have kind of the major players on the field doing a campaign over here, it looks like the king is a little bit left behind, and its only sort of protection is exclusively pawns. And we have a king, we have 2 pawns, maybe even a third to think about, a knight and a rook, all in the neighborhood of the king. So how do we work together to attack the king? Well, we could play check, but then there's a number of moves, right? You have to calculate here, here, here. Not 100% sure if that's going to work. On the other hand, what if I play the move a4? It's the kind of move you might just say, oh, it drops a pawn, not even going to look at it. Like c4, I don't really believe in c4 because then you're giving the king more access toward the center. You're increasing the defense's options, right? We want to do the opposite. We want to restrict the options. So a4 is a really promising move, which is actually our puzzle solution. And what do you have to calculate? Well, basically 2 lines. You could argue, I guess, 3. If the king moves here, and this is probably the cleanest one to calculate, now the king is actually pinning the pawn to itself. So we can go check, force the king here, and that is checkmate. So king a2 doesn't look good. If the king captures our pawn here, now we have space left behind. We take, king is completely blocked with checkmate to follow on the next move. Nothing can be done about that. So notice I didn't have to calculate a lot. If you go here, force mate. If you go here, force mate. So the only move you have to calculate is the king moving toward the center. And unlike sacking this pawn, right, keeping the pawn here is really important because you guard the dark squares. So the king is hoping to reach the d file. So you prevent that and play for mate. And even though it's been a while since I solved this puzzle, I still remember being a little surprised by rook d8. I was like, okay, no problem. I'll take you. You push, and now I checkmate you from the other angle. So that's puzzle 43, rated 2264. Okay, so here, puzzle 44, rated 2312. Black is going to be on the move after rook g1. And, when you're getting into the 40s, you're getting into some really tough puzzles. And one thing that's so important is that when you start out, like the first, say, 10 puzzles, maybe more, you'll often find like quick checkmates. Like I go here, checkmate. Or I go here, then I go here, checkmate, checkmate, whatever. And you don't really need to think too much about your opponent's ideas. I mean, you should. You should always think about what your opponent might play if they were on the move. But truth be told, the earlier puzzles, usually, they're not too demanding with enemy counterplay. But even then, I recommend take that extra second or two to say, hey, if it's my opponent's move, what would they play? Because here, if you ask that question, you'll realize, yeah, rook is hanging feels bad, but look out for the battery on the other side of the world here. Checkmate is in the air. So if I take a rook or whatever, I get checkmated. So now with that kind of urgency in mind, looking at the position, the first move of our solution kind of stood out to me, taking here with check. So here we have to calculate, what happens if the king moves here. Well, then I can just take that rook with check, so not worried about that. If king moves to e2, now I can slide over to e3, check the king. King moves, say, here. And now that my hanging rook is no longer hanging, I can deal with this threat by castling. And at the end of the day, that knight is pinned to the rook. So although, our knight might be hanging, there's ways to take their material. And we're doing quite well here with a number of pawns to our favor, right? We're up 2 pawns, so that feels good. So anyway, figure out what not to play. Don't get mated, right? And so therefore, I captured the pawn with check. I was a little surprised to see the puzzle sack the queen, but okay, no more mate in the air, right? So take the queen. Rook captures, dreaming of checkmate. Look out for the bishop still kind of seatbelting our king there on the dark squares. And here we castle out of our problems and we're up material and puzzle solved. So not too bad, kind of a tricky one, but once you figure out what your opponent wants to do, getting mated is a big problem. So therefore we kind of figure out by a process of elimination that, hey, we got to be forcing, we got to find a way to keep the opponent under some pressure, and we need to avoid checkmate. Okay, this time we're looking at from white's perspective, puzzle 45, rated 2352. Black played h3. And here, again, very important, what does your opponent want? Well, if you give your opponent one more move, there's a number of ways we're going to get mated. That's a mate. That's a mate. And that's going to lead to mate because after I take the queen, the rook takes my queen, that's mate. So going through all the problems, there's only one move to play. Here, take the pawn, right? If I push the pawn, still mate. So I need to take the pawn to both prevent mate and give my king an escape. Because at the end of the day, if we escape, we're winning. We're ready to promote, we're up material, things will feel very good. So here the puzzle continues by saying, okay, well, you opened up the G file, so now I'm going to shift my attack over there and threaten mate. And here you have to be careful, right? How do we defend against checkmate? Not easy. If I go here, I am trying to defend against checkmate there, kind of an X-ray defense, right? But what did I leave behind? The G file, or not the G file, I should say the first rank. So the rook can go down the G file with rook G1. Queen could go here, you name it, queen F1, a lot of ways to get mated. So now, when you're focusing here, you might start to panic and be like, I'm going to get checkmated. What am I going to do? Well, remember, take a breath, sit up, zoom out, see if someone else can help you. Ask for help, seek solutions beyond kind of your local resources here. And you can figure out if queen G1, or excuse me, G2 mate is a big problem, and our queen is already guarding the critical first rank. Look who can help. Rook B2, beautiful move. Now if you go here trying to checkmate me, that's the point of the X-ray defense. Let's take the queen. And so this was the solution, and the puzzle continued with check, and then we just take the rook and end of story. Just for sake of completeness, when you're working on a puzzle that you solve but you don't feel it's fully finished, good opportunity to analyze just a little bit deeper. And here you could play queen F3, which I asked myself, like, okay, how do I kind of make progress here? Because if I move my queen, check, block, check, not making progress. So I need to block with the rook. That was clear. And now we're threatening to promote. And after the bishop moves here to stop the promotion, now our queen can move to F2, with the point that after queen D1, forking the bishop and the king, rather than repeating, now we can play rook G1. And so that way we're up material, we're out of a perpetual check harassment, and we're doing well. So that was puzzle 45. I was on a roll. I was doing pretty well. Let's keep moving. Okay, puzzle 46 rated 2435. The puzzle castled and black to move. Here, I'm going to kind of step up the pace a little bit in analysis. I just want to kind of complete the documentation of my first survival journey of the year. Here, I noticed the queen and bishop are in forking distance of a knight, so I went there. And therefore, queen moves back to guard. I take, they take, d5. And this was the end of the puzzle. But the basic point is, how did I solve it? I saw a fork here, and I also recognized that the bishop and knight are in forking distance of a pawn if I can get there. So attack the queen, win a piece, gain a tempo, and then when the queen moves back, puzzle ended here, by the way, here I have d4. And now I'm ready to win material. And after the move rook a d1, just a good reminder, the puzzle ended here. But I wasn't really satisfied. Like, there's more to the story. You dig a little deeper. Treat it like your own game. After a fork, I want to take one of these minor pieces. You get pinned. And the move I concluded to play was a weird-looking move. But basically, I thought if I go here, I have to calculate one of the attacked pieces threatening my queen. And if I move here, maybe my bishop would come under some kind of fire like that. And I wasn't really sure. So I thought, okay, here, keep it simple. That way, if they move a piece, I'm going to take the other. That's the whole point of the fork. And, if they sacrifice a bishop like here, no problem. I would just take you. And now the knight is hanging. So anyway, that was puzzle 46. Let's see what lies ahead. Okay, puzzle 47, rated 2454. Rook A2 is played. This was a really good one. I'm going to kind of gloss over the details, but basically I wanted C7 to work. But after the rook blocks, I thought, okay, now I can move my knight and go for here to remove the rook. And I thought, that's looking okay, trying to remove the blockading piece with knight b6. I realized after the rook moves here, it doesn't quite work out, because then when I counter, then they take my pawn and I'm down some material and it doesn't quite work out. The engine even pointed out, by the way, which surprised me, but it's quite instructive. You can take the pawn with check, and when you move away, what was my threat? Moving the knight here. How do you stop it? Rook there. And I can't make any progress. So also a cool refutation. So I didn't play that. And once I kind of hit the wall, I realized, okay, that doesn't work. What if I reverse the order? I wanted to go here, then there, right? Well, first, I'm going to play this move. And I attack the rook. So yeah, they can take with check, but then two rooks would be hanging. And after the rook moves to e8, Now I'm ready to push my pawn like so. And after the rook tries to block, now I'm in time to play knight b6, attack the rook, and I'm going to win material. So after take and take, we solve the puzzle. And for those of you wondering, why did the rook move to e8 after we threatened it? Why wouldn't it move here? It can. And if I move here, it's the same problem, right? We transpose into the line that we just looked at. That doesn't work. But what's the key detail? Another tempo move. Hit the rook. So if the rook, runs away, we're ready to crash the back rank and promote. And if the rook moves here to blockade, another tempo move. And if the rook moves, here, then I can push the pawn and promote. And if they go back, we have a fork. So kind of a tricky puzzle, just to show you that again. Gain a tempo against the rook. If they move here, I'm ready to do a dance to attack the rook wherever it moves. And here, the puzzle decided to move the rook to e8. You push forward, and now we're winning. This is a big problem. And so if they go back or something to move the knight, and they're in big trouble. And even if they try to give up some material, this is still a completely winning ending. Like take, get your king up the board. I have an extra pawn, and this is obviously also an extra pawn. And if they go to win the pawn, you'll get into like a winning king and pawn ending. So a little bit technical, but clearly winning for white. And that was puzzle 47. So we keep climbing. And here it's puzzle 48, rated 2504. The king is under attack. The puzzle moves here. And this was a really good puzzle to think about. White to move. So it looks like just by force, maybe we could win. But the problem is, as we do this little merry-go-round, look out for the king moving here. And there's no way to make any progress. So with that not working out, what else can we play? We're pretty restricted. Well, the first move I think is correct. Check. That way we force the king to a5. But the difference is, as you look at forcing lines, they don't always work out. Often they don't work out. But forcing lines provide clarity, which is if I go here with check, I force the king there, not good. Well, what if I prevent that idea? Here we can play the move king to c4, and now we're threatening mate. So black tries to stop it, and here a little king and pawn knowledge will go a long way. You can push your king up a square, and now black has no moves. If black moves away, checkmate. If black takes the rook, then you take with the pawn. So now you have a passed pawn. King goes here, hoping we might rush, play this and this one. It's a draw. You actually go here. Keep it simple. That way you escort your pawn. No way to stop us from promoting, and life is good. I moved a little quickly. For those of you like, why is that a draw? I just want to point that out. Here and here, threatening to capture the pawn. We go here. One more move away to promote, but we're blockaded. And there's no way to make progress here. Even though we're up a pawn, feels great. The issue is the second you move like here, I can play not a5, by the way. That'd be a mistake, because then after here, the king would be forced to move, and then we would win. But there's a little quiet move. Push one square. And the problem is, if black or white goes here, it's a stalemate, it's a draw. I can't make a legal move as black, but I'm not in check. And if you go here, hoping I'm kind enough to move my king, now that reserve tempo saves the day. By moving only one square, now I move here, and it's a draw. Because if you move here, stalemate. If you go here, I take the pawn, I hide in the corner, and that's a draw. So kind of a tricky ending. King and pawn endings, highly underrated. Very interesting stuff there. But my point is, you move your king up the board, you attack the rook. If the rook captures, we take here. And then just remember the idea, allow the parent or the king to escort the child or the pawn. through the street or across the street, but let the king lead first or the parent lead first to escort the vulnerable pawn to promotion. So that works out. And the puzzle continues by taking the pawn here. You take, and now we win the end game simply with the same plan. Escort the pawn, win the game, right? Here you just push, 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 and win. So pretty cool puzzle. Forcing moves didn't solve the puzzle directly, but gave us a lot of insight to help us solve what we needed to find. So that was puzzle 48. Moving forward. Okay, puzzle 49, rated 2588. Knight takes the pawn. I loved this puzzle. It's really, really cool. So give your opponent another move. What time is it, right? It's checkmate time. Check you here, check mate. So we don't have time to dawdle around. What can we play? Most tempting move, taking the rook, not working. Why? Because here the king has one move to rain on our parade. Moving here, we can throw in a check. King stays kind of away from the knight and the bishop, and there's no real way to make progress, and our king is feeling the heat every bit as much as black is feeling the heat from our queens, so not working out. But we don't need that rook. Our target is the king, and the way we solve this puzzle, this is a forcing moves puzzle for sure. Check, first move in our solution, attack the king. Only move you have to calculate is here, right? Now we have kind of blocked the bishop's defense of that pawn, so we take with check, guarded by the knight and the bishop there. We force the king to take our knight, and now that would be checkmate. So that feels very good. Going back after we capture, I said force. I was a little bit imprecise with my language. If the king takes, that is mate. The puzzle did not take our knight, moved here. And now if I play check, we invite a piece to defend. Not a good sign at all. We don't want to do that. And even though, yeah, there's a rook hanging and you could fork the king and the rook or something, again, look out for counterplay, right? So here, we play a check, which is a really, really cool move. And the idea is that now if you move here, I have checkmate. And if you take the knight, which is what happens in the puzzle, we have checkmate. So going through that again, I was kind of fast and kind of misspoke a little bit. Check. No option other than here. Check. If king takes the knight, it's a mate in one. So after here, you just have to kind of arrange it where you force the king to take here and you have mate. And the way you do that is by stepping over here. King either goes there and gets mated or takes the knight, and then we have mate. So really cool puzzle. And now we're going to push to puzzle 50. Okay, puzzle 50 rated 2629. Stay tuned. This might be a daily puzzle inspiration a little bit later. You might notice this kind of pattern around the corner. Black played queen here. White to move. What would you do? Well, mate in one, unpleasant, right? So I need to be very forceful. And here I found a very nice line. Check. Attack the king, check again. Now if the king moves back, we have mate in one. So therefore, the king could move here or here. King goes there, checkmate. King moves here. We have check, force the king back, check again. Knight has to block, checkmate. Okay, feels good. So going back from the start, check, here, check. Only move to delay the inevitable is blocking. And here you have to be careful, just like the last puzzle. If you attack the king and you invite a piece to defend, usually not a great sign. These pieces are sleeping. I don't want to awaken them. So if I attack, the knight blocks and I don't have a follow-up. So going back, how do I keep attacking the king without inviting more pieces to the dance? We check. King moves here or here. We have the same move, mate. So king is forced not here. I guard that square. Forced here. Now we throw in a check. King is forced to g7. Swing back over to the g file, attack the king, force it here. And now that we guard the escape, we have a mate like so. So really cool puzzle. Stay tuned. We'll see something as a daily puzzle quite like this soon. I just want to quickly kind of gloss over the details because I know the video is already quite long. In the actual progression of the puzzles, I think I took a break here and resumed for puzzle 51. So let's kind of push ahead here and see what happens. Okay, puzzle 51, rated 2597. My opponent or the puzzle attacked the king, and I just took the approach, with black to move. I'll give you a moment to think. What are my options, right? Well, move the king or take the rook. I want to take the rook. I didn't see immediately how the sky would be falling, so I captured the rook. The pawn takes back. And now the really hard moment. Where do we go from here? Really hard to sort of figure out what to do. We'd love to attack the king, but we lose our knight, and I don't trust my king being stuck here. It doesn't feel great. So I just kind of need to hang tough. I have extra material. One of the most important lessons when you have extra material, you can give some of it back. I have an extra rook. Doesn't feel like it. Rook is doing absolutely nothing, right? And I have another piece on the bench, the knight. So I could move my knight here, give up the rook, but what is my knight doing? Not clear. My king is screaming for help. Don't want to move away from the action, the opposite. Knight here. And I didn't calculate super deep, but basically the idea, queen guards the knight, and the knight, and the queen, let's try that again, the knight, and the queen all harmonize here. So I'm trying to keep that area around my king as safe as I can. And so here you can take my rook, but you have to leave the bishop behind. So after the queen captured, I captured here, and that was the end of the puzzle. I do want to mention that if the queen moves back, for example, well, let me explain why I was thinking that. Again, you can get a lot more out of your puzzle experience by saying, are you satisfied with this ending? Not sure. G3 looks a little scary. If I move forward, I get mated. So sometimes you just got to figure out what not to do. Don't get mated. So I'll move back. If queen, checks, no problem. Step back. And here I thought I was doing pretty well. My knight can go back and attack the queen, and we're doing very, very well. So the only other question I had is, okay, if G3, I can move back. So what if the queen goes here, stopping an escape square, right? Now you can play any number of moves. Knight F2 is possible, attract the king, and look at some options to discover the bishop's wrath there. But I was just kind of looking for a way to keep it simple. And one way I can do that is just bring the knight back, and I can always kind of dance my way out of danger. So like a check, no problem. I go here, you check me again. I go here, and when the smoke clears, we're up a piece, and we're winning, and we're also not losing, which is quite nice. So kind of an interesting puzzle, basically figuring out what not to play, how to hold everything together. So that was quite difficult. let's move on to our next puzzle. Okay, puzzle 52. 27-12. Knight b2, black to play. Kind of where we started the video. We start to wind down. Same theme. Knight is pinned to the queen, but it can move, right? And here with the pin, you might say, I don't want to take here because I lose my queen. And it's really easy to kind of get lost there, right? Like in a game, you might be like, oh, can't take the queen. That's bad. And you'll kind of go astray. Well, I think it's really important here to be like thinking about, I guess I've heard it from Sam Shankland, Grandmaster. What if I play the move I want to play anyway? It's a really interesting question. And another way to look at it is, what if I go down a forcing path, right? Even if it looks bad. I want to take the queen, you take my queen. It's very forcing. So ultimately I concluded this move was correct, and that was the first move in the solution. And basically the idea here is that what is white going to play? You don't really have to calculate anything other than taking the queen, because if they don't take your queen, we're up a lot of material, right? So they take the queen, and now I'd like to play a fork, but look out for the bishop there. So here we take the bishop. So to be clear, queen captured even. Now I take the bishop, and I'm up a piece. And now what are they going to do? If they take our bishop here, wasn't played by the puzzle, by the way. You play check, king here, check. Rook is forced to self-pin. And here, maybe I was a little bit imprecise. That's not too fair on myself. I captured the rook quite good. But maybe even more accurate is the thought that my knight is under fire and I could go after the bishop. But even here, it's like kind of complicated with rook c1 and kind of unnecessary. So I'll stand by my notes that I wrote after the session, and that I did like the idea of taking the rook. So that encouraged me to say, good enough. I can live with that choice. And so if they go here, I have a fork, win the rook after a check, like I was showing. And if they take the knight, I want to, throw in a check, fork the king and the rook. And after here, what do? Be very careful not to go with the momentum too quickly. Like, okay, I delivered a fork. Now I'm going to take that rook. Well, look out for a loose end. The bishop is hanging here. So first take. And now notice I'm up a piece because I have 3 minors versus 2. And the knight is protected by the bishop. So that way, either you take my bishop and then I take your rook, or you move your rook away, and then I can just kind of trade down with a winning position. So definitely a complicated puzzle on one hand, but kind of a direct calculation, which is if I take the queen first, I'm kind of dictating the flow. Like, you need to take my queen, like so. Now I'm going to take you, and I'm always one capture ahead, right? So if you take me, I have a fork. You take me, I have a fork, and we ended up winning material like so. And so that was this puzzle, and now we climb even higher. Okay, this is puzzle 53, also known as my first strike. So here, after rook ae1, black to move. Thought a little bit about the bishop and the knight here. I thought about forking them. But you don't want to play with your food. I could have captured the bishop. Now it comes back to haunt me by attacking the queen. Doesn't feel good. So I take first move in the solution. And after rook e7, now I have to decide what to do. And this is where I went astray. I did think about taking the pawn here. And I thought, that's not bad. Take a pawn, make that weak, help protect the diagonal, but I wasn't sure about discoveries. I wasn't sure about maybe a pin. And I thought, hey, I do want to take the pawn, but I do also want to awaken my pieces here and prevent some big attack. So here I played bishop f5, thinking prevent another piece from attacking me. I know the staring contest here is pretty awkward, but after the knight checks the king and attacks the bishop, I was like, I think I'm okay. So I kind of saw this and was like, okay, they could take. I go here, and I don't see how the sky's falling. So this is an example, where I trusted myself and was like, hey, I don't see a mate here. I'm good with it. And I was completely wrong. And that's how we learn. So what did I miss? Well, pretty straightforward, actually. Check. Can't go back home. Here. Check. Here. Mate. So I missed a mate. So had I have seen that point, then I would have said, okay, I'll take here and allow the fight to continue. Check. Here. And now if check, I didn't actually have to move my bishop to the square to influence the defense. I can actually support it from afar, block the attack, threaten the bishop there, and, we're doing okay. So very instructive miss, rated 2710. So, tricky. Let's go to our next one. So puzzle 53, take 2, trying to solve my 53rd puzzle. Here with black to move, queen e3 was played, rated 28-29. What do we do here? Have to admit, not the best puzzle in the world. If you turn on the engine, there's multiple moves that are good for black. And even a puzzle that's not so great, you can still gain a lot of positive kind of momentum from it by always going back to the thought, what would you play in a game, right? You're not going to solve every puzzle. You're not going to solve every problem in a game. But what would you play here and why, right? That's what matters. So I noticed right away, look at the alignment between the loose knight, the unprotected loose rook, and my bishop here. Only thing in the way is my own pawn. So really wanted this to work. The problem is if they take, with the queen, then I can take with check and I'm forking the king and the rook. Feels great. But after pawn takes, the queen is guarding the knight and I wasn't sure. So then I thought, okay, what else can I do? Well, king, queen, and rook are all in forking distance of a knight, and that pawn is not protected. So I ultimately played knight d4. Didn't feel great about the answer, but basically concluded I'm threatening the fork. If you go here, if nothing else, I can take a bishop maybe and go for a e4. So like if you go here, now I would go e4, exposing the attack. If you take with like the knight, now if I push, maybe there's some way to defend. So I could take you here. And it's a little bit murky, but then there's still e4, hitting the rook, hitting this pawn, not 100% sure what's going on, but it looked okay. And so I played knight d4 with the knowledge. It doesn't feel correct. It's probably wrong because I didn't see kind of the bottom of the problem. But truth be told, that's what was played. Takes with the knight. I take back, fork. They trade queens. I take here. And one thing I did see in advance why I like this line is the knight can't really move here because then I'm going to push the pawn and try to win the rook. How do I do that? Got to remove the obstacle here, take the knight, open up the dark squares, hit the bishop, hit the rook, and I'm doing great. So the puzzle concluded with the knight not blundering, allowing the capture, but it moved back. And then I captured the pawn, and I saw that far and said, okay, I see a way I might win a pawn. And that was enough to solve the puzzle. Really uneasy, wasn't sure. But at the end of the day, don't spend like 30 minutes on a puzzle. Not practical, right? Spend as much time as you feel comfortable. Treat it like a game and be like, if I don't see it, what would I play? And learn from it. So that was a 28-29 rated puzzle. And let's move forward. So my apologies. I actually recorded the last puzzle and did, all the editing up to this point, and then somehow the recording didn't track. I know there's been some lag in the video. I'm using kind of an older recording software, so apologies for that, and I'll try to work on fixing that moving forward. But this was the last puzzle of my first session of the year. And after rook f1, I'm just going to go quite quickly. The error that I made here, feel free to pause the video and think about what you play as black. I didn't say this in any other puzzle, but it's so important. Assess the terrain first, meaning you get kind of pushed out of this airplane, you parachute into this unfamiliar territory. Take a moment and say, hey, what's going on here, right? Like, what's the material count? What's, in the air as a threat? And so here, a big point, sort of two things. Number one, we're down a piece, right? Black is down a bishop. And the other thing that's clear is I saw the queen is under fire. I can take the knight, which I do, but I kind of only looked here. Getting tired, in the session it happens, but I didn't think about the knight being under fire. So I felt kind of relaxed, like take here, which is what I played. If h4, I thought that might happen. I'd step back and, okay, I have a big threat here to discover the queen's attack against the king, and things felt great. I remember being surprised by queen f3, threatening to take my pawn and attack the king. And again, I just kind of missed the whole point that the knight was under fire. So I was like, oh, this is good enough. Wrong. Discovered the queen's attack, hit the rook, hit the bishop there. And after king f2, I just kind of thought, well, that's good enough. Hit the capture, the bishop, and I feel good. Broke up the battery there, but just totally missed that. That's hanging. So that is where I went astray. The solution, a little bit complicated, but instructive, is black should right now, play f5. And what you're doing, you're preventing the queen from taking the pawn, and I'm also threatening f4 to attack the king. And when you slide over, f4, you slide over here, checkmate is my threat. Give me, two moves, check here, and then mate. So the puzzle continues with d3, discovering the bishop's attack against the queen, and here, look out for f4, a little murky, to allow the sacrifice and to invite another rook into the party. So you slide away from the diagonal trickery and you threaten mate, like so. And now the puzzle continues with here, h3, threatening to take, and you invite another piece to the party. I want to attack the king, like so. How do I do it? Don't invite another piece to the party. Invite another pawn to the party. Pawns are not pieces. So I play g5, threaten mate. Well, I didn't play g5, but if I wanted to solve the puzzle, I would have. And after take, we have mate. And if instead I'm threatening mate, you go that way, I can take the bishop. And if you take me back, now, knight is hanging, get it out of harm's way, attack the queen, and we're doing very well here. So anyway, apologies for the issue with the lag in the camera. I I'm going to now move forward and have more kind of lighter lift material. I know this is a bit heavy, but I wanted to give you a perspective of not just me being, a coach or a chess advisor, but rather a fellow student of the game, share my travel log with you, and show you where I struggle too. You're far from alone. Whatever level you're at, your struggles are not in isolation. We're all in this together. Let's make this a great year to learn and grow together. And I'll look forward to adding more instructive content that I receive in my coach's mailbox, so to speak. I'll share some of my own games, you name it. And just thank you for being part of the journey. Appreciate all of you and hope you have a great rest of your day.